Look, y'all. Yum. That's the choice for tonight's video. Hey, y'all. Hope you're doing good tonight, today, whatever time of day it is when you're watching. I'm filming at night, but I hope you're doing good. And I got my salted caramel hot chocolate, or I guess my hot salted caramel drink, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I got it at Target. If you've got a Target near you, it's just their Good and Gather brand. It's really tasty. But I'm going to talk to you tonight about awareness, about intention, and what being faith-minded looks like in healing. You know, how faith can be a critical part to help push you past being stuck in your healing, on your healing journey. And so we're going to be talking about, towards the end, the difference in love versus supernatural love. And so I want to open by sharing a definition. So in the online etymology dictionary and looking up the term supernatural from the 15th century, it says of or given by God, divine and heavenly. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we move forward. So I read chapter 9 in this book, Fire in the Soul. And it's all about meditation. And I believe the title is actually meditation and, let's see. Yeah, meditation and centering prayer. So let's start by reading a little bit from chapter 9, some excerpts here. It opens with a quote from, I think it's Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, from The Little Prince. And I probably pronounced that totally wrong. So, but it says, "It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye." So that's going to be related to the overarching message today. So just kind of tuck that away up here. She's talking about, she opens by talking about someone named Fritz, and how she met him. It was he was a young man, and how or she received a letter from Fritz, and he shared his experience with her. We'll come back to that later. But he had this. He was going through some medical treatment. He had, I think, Crohn's disease, and he was just going through being in the hospital. But he had this experience of kind of like a numinous type enlightenment, sort of energetic, raising your vibration type of moment. And she says, from his expanded perspective, right, like in that moment, he knew at the deepest level of his being that everything was perfect. So she's talking about him sitting there and just watching, all the busyness of the nurses in the hospital, and everything going on, and how, our normal perspective is one where we just see life is very chaotic, and it is. It's not that that's not true, but from this expanded point of view, or this bird's eye view that I talk about a lot on my channel, and she says from his expanded perspective, right? He knew at the deepest level of his being that everything was perfect. She says everything that was happening was perfect. And so I love this. In my, excuse me, y'all, gotta get some water too. I don't know if y'all are like that too. If I drink coffee or hot chocolate or anything, I gotta balance it off with some water. So, but there's this this wonderful reminder that pops up a lot in the yoga practice that I go to, the studio, where one of the teachers there will say, because you're usually coming to class and you're just kind of like, if you're like me, you're busy a lot, and you're just sort of, when you go to yoga class, it's kind of like, you're having to switch gears really quick, especially if you're getting there late like me, or just right at the time rather. And so you're like going from this busy day to just wanting to dial it down, and yet it's not as easy as flipping a switch. But sometimes the teacher will just simply say, or remind us that everything is okay as it is. And that's sort of like a reminder for us that we don't have to resist what is in that moment. In other words, if we're feeling crazy and chaotic and everything, instead of, coming to class and thinking, man, this is going to take me forever to get my breath and calm down and relax, it's kind of like that mindset in itself is creating resistance. And that can act as an obstruction to the whole point of the class. And so it's just a neat little reminder. I just encourage you to consider doing that for yourself throughout your day, just to remind yourself that everything's okay. Even if it doesn't seem that way, even if you have a mountain of things to do in front of you. Maybe you're behind on some things. Maybe you have projects or people waiting for you, or just all these different life stresses, that you have, or you're being pulled in a million different directions. If you just simply say, okay, I acknowledge how this seems. And it's not that you're gaslighting yourself and saying that's not true, that this isn't stressful. It's just that you're trying to come up here and see everything from this expanded perspective, and just and it's going to really tie into faith, which we're going to talk about later. But it's really like from the perspective of faith and trust that despite how it seems on this level, from this level looking down, it's all okay. It's all okay. And so I love that. And so a lot of times our yoga teachers will say, like if we're going through our poses and we're having a hard time, actually doing the pose, because some of them are pretty challenging. It's kind of like wherever you are, they'll say, well, wherever you are is okay. Whatever you can do is perfect for you. And everything in this moment is as it should be. And it's just a reminder that, oh, that's true. It's kind of like, I think sometimes we subconsciously put pressure on ourselves to do things perfectly, or to be a certain way, or to, we think that things are not the way they should be, quote unquote. And I don't even think that this is, like I say, I think it's subconscious a lot of times. It's not even something that we're even aware that we're doing. And so just that little reminder, I just encourage you to try that out and see how it feels for you, because it's been really helpful for me. So she describes in chapter 9 this state of mind, especially when you are immersed in this state of mind. And sometimes it's a shift that happens within us, almost in a numinous manner. It's like, y'all, in a numinous way. It's like we don't really know how we got there. Something just shifted, and suddenly we are just in this state of complete peace and a deeper knowing that everything's okay. And she calls it being suspended in this state of perfection, or I would say in a state of complete surrender and faith, So she says, this is the experience of seeing or realizing the higher self, the true nature of who we are. And so then she talks about her experience with, I think it's called ayahuasca, and how she experienced that. She describes it as energy. She says, I felt the energy. It was multi-sensorial or sensorial. I saw it as light and color, and heard it as an indescribably beautiful music. She talks about feeling this energy rise within her body, which is described in some cultures as kundalini. And she says it was just a powerful energy and just a fierce kind of courage, more like a fire in my soul, which I loved because when I read that, I thought, okay, that's cool. Just tucked away in there, But she says, when the energy reached my heart, I was, for lack of better words, shown inside my own soul. So it's almost like the experience of becoming the observer, which is that higher vantage point, seeing yourself and your situation in context of the grander whole of life and existence, and understanding that, it's really true in the Bible where it says, I think it's Romans 8:28, God works all things for the good of those who love him. So when you're in the middle of stuff, it feels like that's your whole world, and it's all consuming and stressful and, trying and challenging and all this. But from up here, you can see how there's more to the story that we can't see yet because we're so focused on the moment a lot of times. So becoming the observer is just a wonderful goal to attain that you can intentionally. I talked about opening the video, talked about awareness and bringing intention into your life, and that's something that we can do through practices like meditation and what she calls centering prayer. So she goes on to compare this experience, which is really one from the soul. She compares that to the ego. And she says the ego is that part of ourself that thinks it is separate from the whole. Like a frightened child terrified of abandonment, the ego projects fear and guilt to maintain its own seeming control over events. In this way, the ego maintains the illusion of safety, right? At the price of separation from self, others, and the divine. So I see this as sort of like, when you are in alignment with the divine, sometimes that's described as like this, this inner spiritual marriage or cosmic wedding. It's just a oneness that we experience, with the divine. And from that place, we do feel peace because we are essentially immersed in a mindset of faith, understanding that this moment won't last forever, understanding that, hardships won't last forever, that there's more. But the ego, again, she describes, I thought that was perfect, how she says it's like a frightened child, terrified of abandonment, right? And just thinking that the child has to, because children are immature, they don't understand things. So children sometimes feel, the present moment is just, that's all there is to them, which is why everything is critical. They dropped, their cookie and it broke. It's like the end of the world. So that's just a perfect example, as far as I'm concerned, as far as the ego, right? But yeah, it's then she has a section about meditation and the relaxation response, and she goes on to that. She wrote another book called Minding the Body, Mending the Mind, and that sounds like it would be pretty good as well. The next section is meditation, mind, and spirit. And then she goes into a section called Centering Prayer, Becoming Present to the Divine. She says, centering prayer is a form of meditation in which the object of focus is the divine presence. So this would be more like, because I know a lot of Christians, like your I'm generalizing here, but like collectively, the Christian religion a lot of times doesn't really, it's not centered on meditation, but yet we are called to be still and to know God in that way, in that manner, and we're called to pray without ceasing. So in some regard, you might view meditation in that manner. I think there's different ways to meditate, but that's what she calls centering prayer, right? In which the object of focus is the divine presence. I guess it's like opposed to just emptying your mind and being this totally open and vulnerable vessel, to potentially, I don't know, other bad spirits out there. I have no idea. But then she has a portion in this chapter called A Simple Practice of Meditation. She gives some examples and some things that you can do. And so she closes this chapter. I'm going to read this closing paragraph with you all. She says, while many people profit from a regular practice of sitting meditation, it is by no means the only way to remember the sacred. As we will discuss in the next chapter, washing the dishes can be a meditation, as can petting the cat. My all-time favorite meditation is a small, moist piece of chocolate cake eaten with exquisite attention and tremendous gratitude. Any time that we are fully present in the moment, we are meditating. We are free from the limitations of thought and at one with the river of life. I love that. I love that. And even in the Bible, Jesus, tells us that every time we eat, we are to remember him, right? So, anyway, just a really awesome book. Just highly recommend. But let's move forward with a message. So, yes, meditation you might think of as intentional awareness, where we have the goal of expanded perspective and becoming the observer in our life. And it really does help to realign, or you might even say recalibrate, our viewpoint as coming from our spirit instead of the ego. And that's huge. That's huge. That can have a great impact on your whole day. just taking a moment to readjust, So, how does this, everything we've talked about, tie into being faith-minded? So, in Mark chapter 11, it says, whatsoever things you desire, when you pray, believe you will receive them and you shall have them, right? That's kind of a big deal, I think. So what's the catalyst part of that manifestation formula, right? Believe, right? Whatever it is you desire, when you pray, believe. That's the instruction. We are instructed to believe, right? Believe that you will receive them and you shall have them. So belief and faith is transformative, right? And I'm thinking about, I'll share with y'all, I think I may have shared this recently already, but I was playing one of my daughter's video games. I was helping her with it, and we were both having a really hard time with this one part. And so in my mind, I just kind of played a trick on myself and just and thought of myself in that moment, because we had been working on this particular stage in the game for hours. And so it's one of those things where you work on it for 45 minutes, you can't get past it, you just let's turn it off and do something else, but come back to it tomorrow. But it just and it goes on for days. So I literally tried out, just in my mind, this imaginative exercise of, what if I just pretended in my own mind to be like this professional gamer, if there is such a thing. I don't even know. And just that shift in my mind, I became the observer. I believed that, and I became the observer, and I noticed that the results, without my input, it was just the results of that belief, were that my breathing went from shallow and anxious to calm and deep, and therefore my focus sharpened, and I was able to get through it. So it's just a really simple example, but still. And I'll say this too. When I was teaching in the public school system, I taught elementary art. And so there were children that came to our school from, and they had very abusive backgrounds, and they had been adopted into new families. And what happened a lot with those kids is they were given new names altogether, like new first name too, right? And it's almost like I asked somebody about that, and it seems pretty obvious, but they confirmed. I don't remember if it was a school counselor or what, but they confirmed that that helps the child to transition and let go of that really horrible past. And it helps them to move on in life, to put off all the suffering and everything from the past. So I thought that was really interesting. And so, this whole concept of rebirth can become very complex. And, if you think about it, the world says that our past defines us, right? Think about your resume, just as a quick example. But God says we are literally washed clean and renewed, right? With a new identity in the body of Christ through the Christian lens, right? It's almost like you're adopted into a new family, just like the children, or like you've joined this club, but it's like it's way more than that. So, but it brings, basically what I'm getting at is, it brings us to an interesting question, right? If letting go of the past is good, what exactly does that mean? Okay, because we know if we've been through some stuff and we're on the healing journey and we want to move on, right? We know we can't forget the past. So what does it actually mean to let go on our healing journey? How can we see that in a way that it makes sense to us, right? Like we really get it, Let me say this. I'm going to share a lot of thoughts actually, but what if our pain and suffering is exaggerated because we are holding on to something that's dead and gone, okay? If you think about it, if you left a relationship with a wolf in sheep's clothing, then your whole perception of that relationship was just that. It was just a perception, and that's it. There was nothing else to it. It was a facade, In other words, it never even existed, this relationship with a wolf in sheep's clothing. Maybe someone that was living a double life. They were just very deeply rooted in deception. You didn't even really know who they were, for example. Someone like that. It's kind of like that relationship only really existed in your mind. And Sam Vaknin talks about the shared fantasy and how that's a little bit different depending on, the label of psychopath or sociopath or narcissist or whatever. But it's really a very interesting concept that you mistook. You thought it was reality, but really it was just like you were living in a movie script, that this person created, this fantasy world that this person created, and had you caught up in that while they were taking from you or exploiting you or using you as their mask while they're running off living that double life or whatever they're doing. So, but I'm reminded of when Jesus says in the Bible to let the dead bury the dead. So we'll kind of be thinking about that too as we move forward in the discussion. So I think moving on with our life after coming to the realization that what we thought was real was actually like a movie, it's like you can't go back, right? But sometimes we still find ourselves stuck in this reaction of shock and grief. And it's not even that you'd want to go back because there was nothing there, and it was painful and it was confusing and just awful in a lot of different ways. But, and you see that it was truly false and a movie and a fantasy and all this. You see that. But somehow it's like you have this logic telling you these facts, you know for sure. Either you found evidence of their double life or you validated everything with a therapist or however it was. You have these facts, but yet you can't, on your healing path, it's kind of like logically you have the like academic mindset, the intellectual piece, the data, the facts required to let it go, but you can't let it go. So it's like, why? And I know that a lot of people talk about this being the trauma bond, but I want to go a little bit deeper than that and offer a different way to look at this, okay? This being stuck, this being stuck in this, like I said, this reaction of grief or shock, right? So the big question here is why? When you know all this stuff now, why can't that be enough to just move on? Like, really move on. For one thing, facts are that. They are facts. Facts are part of your logical thinking mind. But emotions, that's different. That's a different part of you. And I'm sure you would agree that emotions sometimes feel like almost like they have a mind of their own, So let me share. I wanted to reserve the very opening part of chapter 9 for this part in the conversation and the discussion. So let me share that with you all now. Okay. So again, she was talking about this man Fritz, right? So here's what she says. Fritz was sitting in bed when he suddenly felt a strong bolt of energy rush up his spine, although Western medical science and psychology has no explanation for such events. Eastern science and psychology does. The body's subtle energy is called Qi in China. Ki, I guess it's Ki, K-I, in Japan, and Kundalini in India. It is the energy that flows in acupuncture meridians and is stored in reservoirs known as chakras. Perhaps you remember having an aha experience and feeling a chill go up your spine. If so, you have felt the rising of the subtle energy, which accompanies sudden knowings and opens a deeper level of perception, not through the physical senses, but through the spiritual senses, the eyes of the heart. And so, all these myths and fairy tales throughout time, if you think about it, they all have superhero characters, or characters with supernatural powers. Or either you witness the main character like be transformed like as they go on their adventure. And typically on their journey they meet these like half human, half animal type creatures or something too. So, and remember that in myth and fairy tale everything is exaggerated too, right? To get the point across from the perspective of metaphor, right? There's different ways to look at these. But, storytellers exercise a lot of creative liberty with these otherworldly characters for a reason when we're thinking about metaphor. What is that reason? What is that reason? I would say to represent something or someone supernatural, numinous, or divine. So, and then of course they make this great impact on the main character in these stories. See, they help the character along the path. So if you apply that to your life, it's kind of like it doesn't make sense to try to walk this path and move on down the way on your healing journey only having just a bunch of data and facts and logical. That's not enough. There's more to us as human beings than the mind, right? And I don't even think we really know a whole lot about the human mind. So again, you can have all the academic data and proof in the world, but you won't be convinced on the soul level to let go of a painful past or person in your past without being met at that same level, because your soul is involved, right? Which is why a lot of people have throughout time, have been able to find the healing that they've needed through shamanic type practices, right? Or a spiritual belief system. So, I think I've shared with you all before. My focus in my teaching program in school was on the whole, what they call the whole child approach. And there's different ways to describe that, but to me, it's essentially just carrying the understanding that human beings are more than robots. There's more to us than that. Thank goodness. Right? And so our approach to healing and to living and grieving and moving on and everything needs to be holistic too. And so, we can't just think of ourselves as only physical and mind, body and mind, and that's it. So there is more, even though it's unseen and really undefined. So things like truth and deception and love and all the ways that love manifests is from another part of us. Okay? It's not our logical thinking brain. It's deeper than that. When we think of energy and even the fact that we can observe like firsthand when somebody passes away, when they die, it's like we understand that person, their essence leaves the body. Their essence is separate from the body. That's proof to me, right? And so, it's the essence inside of the body, the vehicle, that leaves. And so, I feel like most people can't deny that there is an energetic ingredient in our makeup as human beings. And I'm pretty sure, I did a quick search, a quick Google search. It doesn't make me an expert by any means, but feel free to research and investigate if you feel called to. But I'm pretty sure that there's actual energy that's like scientifically observed or observable in our DNA, right? And so I believe this is why we can have body memory regarding trauma. It's kind of like you can know you're safe for sure. You can know it logically, but you can still jump if you hear something triggering. It's like there's this impression that was made on another part of you, right? So it's like energy kind of within us even. It's almost like it has an intelligence all its own. Have you ever thought about that? It's like almost like it has its own memory, or like it might be sentient or conscious, right? If you think about even lightning knows what to strike and what to go around. How is that? It's pretty wild to think about. And so, even my great granddad shared with the family that he had witnessed himself on his own farm a lightning ball. I mean, right there, like in his proximity, close to him. Or you might call it like an electric plasma orb or something. But I mean, he's not the only one. There's been a lot of people who have seen those. I mean, isn't that wild? So, yeah, and I don't know why I don't feel like anybody sees them anymore today. I'm not sure why. It's almost like our atmosphere has changed or something. But the point here is basically that the Bible says that in order to become wise, we have to first become fools so that we may become wise, right? So there's a lot that we still don't understand about this whole human experience, right? But even if we just take the things that we do know and we work with them in the right way, I do believe true healing is possible, okay? So let's start by looking at some healing related topics through a new perspective. I want to especially focus on love, and I'll explain why. if you didn't care about someone or something like a cause or a strong conviction or belief that you have, um, then you couldn't experience anger or grief about that person or related to that cause. So love is the critical component. Again, that's why I feel like love can. I don't think we often see anger as love, or we don't see sadness as love. But if you think about it, those things wouldn't even be possible without that passion within you. The passion within you has to be there for you to care at all, right? So if you are still experiencing sadness over the loss of a relationship that was really bad for you, I want you to consider this. Maybe it's not so much about the person that you loved, okay? But the cause within you, or the reason that you loved them, right? And the reason that you still have love itself in your heart, okay? In other words, if you are a truly spiritual person, some people are not. They're just not. There's no depth there. They're very shallow. They're very materialistic, right? But if you, and a lot of times it's not a lot of times, it seems to be this way to me. So maybe this will kind of resonate with you. But it's the people who have depth that feel the most. That's kind of what I'm talking about here. So if you're a spiritual minded person who loves God, okay, then you're going to love other people. It just goes along with the territory. It's part of it. You have love in you. It's kind of like either you have love in there or you don't, And so love, I feel like, truly is the basis for all emotion, which is why these people who are just deeply rooted in deception, this is why they seem so shallow and materialistic and empty and void, because you don't see the love there. They seem robotic even, So let me give you an example, because I'm basically what I'm saying here is that if you're still kind of stuck in shock and grief and struggling with some strong emotions, but the logic tells you this wasn't right for you, what I'm saying to you is you may not be stuck because of loving that person so much. It's just the fact that you are a loving person. The fact that you have love inside of you. Okay? So, let me give you an example. If you're like me, you don't want anybody to suffer. No matter who they are. Even if it's somebody that did you wrong. And seeing life from a spiritual viewpoint, you understand what that person is missing out on. If you come to a place of understanding that they are just anxiously striving to fill this void within them, and you come to the conclusion that they must not have that same spirit of love residing in them, and it manifests in a lot of ways. They can do some pretty malignant stuff even, okay? But it's sad to you still, because you, from that higher level perspective, you understand what they're missing out on. I'm reminded of that scene in, I think it was called Ghost, with the movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore, where his friend, was very corrupt and even tried to swoop in and take his wife, after he passed away and all this stuff. Well, anyway, he was still, even though he did his friend really wrong, Patrick Swayze, when he was already, a spirit, he had already passed away and passed over, when he witnessed his corrupt friend die and enter into the spirit world, he was just filled with grief because he knew the consequences. of not having the spirit of love within his heart, right? And so the consequences in that movie were played out through the Christian lens, right? But even in our own current life, there's consequence of living without love in your heart. And you understand that that person is living that way. And it's sad. It's sad. And so, yeah. So it's not, it's not about, when I say what they're missing out on, again, just to reiterate, it's not that they're missing out on physical or material things or worldly pleasures. In fact, they're usually overindulging in those things. But you understand that there's a richness that comes from living a soulful life, and they're not getting that. Through the Christian lens, it's living in and from love. 1 Corinthians chapter 13 is all about love. And verse 2 says, if we don't have love, then we don't have anything. We have nothing. And that's really at the heart of the message. And I feel like sometimes we're feeling grief and we can't figure out why. And we're like, this doesn't make sense because maybe it's a trauma bond, and we just try to make sense of it. But I think truly, if you're a soulful person with the spirit of love inside of you, I think that grief is from that place. It's just because you have love inside of you, and you can see things from a higher perspective, right? So again, consider that maybe the weight that you feel, and it is heavy, is not that of grieving something that never was right or true, but grieving the fact that you now know firsthand that some people will live their whole lives trying to fill that void with everything except love. And here's the other shift that I've had to make too about love. Supernatural love from God, okay? Love isn't all positive and upbeat. I think that that's kind of like seeing it in that way, like it's supposed to be this way, all glittery and light and lighthearted. That's sort of like how Satan is described in the Bible as being like this light, but he's a false light. It's kind of like appealing, deceptively appealing, right? Not scary. So that's the trick in our culture and just in our collective human experience. That's the lie, I think, is that love is supposed to be that way. Reality isn't so. Reality, from a position of being a soulful person with love in our heart, reality is that love is heavy. Okay? It's not always positive and upbeat. Sometimes it is, but is that really even love? Or is that just feeling good? The Bible says God is love. And also, in describing love, this is an important part of our message too. The Bible says that love believes all things. So we're making a full circle. We're coming back now to belief and faith. Okay, so let's tie this together. So people who are in the spirit of love, I bet you would agree, tend to find contentment in the little things. Right? Truly, the little things. The little thing, it's like, why is that? Let's talk about it. The little things are the big things for those with love in their hearts, right? Because we make them so. We make them big things, okay? And we do that because we believe them to be important and special and wonderful, okay? That's a special ingredient, see? So faith and belief is the catalyst in the alchemy of love. And that's why someone without love in their heart can't find contentment in little things. That's why they are always going all out, spending a lot of money and having to have the biggest and bestest and most and all this stuff. Really, it's the whole keeping up with the Joneses saying. They're never satisfied. They're never content. And so people who don't have, rather, the signature of the Spirit of love are identifiable to us because, again, nothing fills the void inside of them. And nothing will fill that void because it's a designated reservoir for the Spirit of love. It can't be filled with anything else, right? And so we're going to identify them, right? By witnessing and observing their constant striving or their maladaptive attempts to fill that void through either power plays, like either they're going to be materialistic or they're going to have these emotional addictions that feed them power, right? So it's very sad. It is very sad. So I just want to say, you can, despite how sad that is, I want you to take heart, okay? And let me explain why. This is what has helped me. Essentially, it comes down to trusting God, and I'll tell you why, okay? It's because He knows what He's doing. And I know you know that. If you have a spiritual belief, if you believe in the divine, but sometimes it's just helpful to hear those things, And let me expand on that. When I say He knows what He's doing, His design of this whole human experience for all of us is that of free will, okay? And if we do our part to share the gospel of love, as far as having a relationship with the divine, that's all we're expected to do. And so we cannot, and furthermore, we should not try to wake other people up. That's not our job. It's not our job. And we have to understand, where is the division of responsibility here? It's God who convicts hearts. Okay? It's personal. It's a personal thing between these people and God. Again, we're told what our job is, right? Our job is simply to love. And in doing so, it is sort of like bearing our cross, the cross of love. It's heavy. So it's about shifting our perception of love, for one thing. Understanding that to have love in your heart means to also have a certain level of soul wisdom where you understand that it's very sad. You're going to experience grief when other people don't have that within them, right? But we're told to pray for others too, and we can do that, even our enemies. But other than that, it's between God and each person. And because of that, here's where we can take heart. We can start to shift our mindset from one of loss and personal responsibility for this person and their contentment and everything working out, we can shift away from that to a mindset of faith, because we understand what our responsibility is and what is between this other person or these other people and God, okay? So again, it's about having faith in God's design of free will and faith in what He said is expected of us, okay? And also understanding that carrying the Spirit of love can be like us carrying our cross. Love is heavy sometimes, but it sure beats living life without it. So I hope that this has given you a lot to think about, to chew on, to marinate in, and I thank you so much for coming along to hear the message. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you feel called to share. Just remember, faith is the key, but it doesn't have to be blind faith. We are told about these things. And I think sometimes we just get caught up in forgetting the word from God, which is very helpful in shifting our mindset. So we are holistic beings. We are not just physical and intellectual. There's more. And so just keep that in mind too. And I just encourage you to try to keep that bird's eye view where you can see everything from up here. And again, I just thank you so much. Have a wonderful, beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.